Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay. My name's Phil Cambers, and I'm the Commercial Director here at TruStack. It's an absolute pleasure to host you today for our latest Lunch and Learn. We've got a real strategic focus this year on two areas, actually, security and cloud. Security is obviously overarching over to everything. And when it comes to security, there's lots of different facets to it. And today we're going to be focusing on one particular element, and it's really around the recovery side of it. So I've got myself, Phil Cambers. I shall do the introduction today. And then I'm going to pass over to someone who a lot of you know, Russell Henderson, our technical director. Russell's going to get into the technology a little bit more, and he's going to set the scene and come up with some scenarios of technology and how this would help in your cybersecurity recovery strategy. Then I'm going to pass you over to Mark Galpin from Dell. Mark will go into things in a lot more detail. And then we actually have a client testimonial from a customer of ours, Andrew Finesse from a company called Unipress. And we're going to play that video. If for whatever reason the video sound doesn't come across right, we're gonna send that out separately. Mark, could you just advance the slide on, please? Yeah. So this is the agenda. So I'm doing the introduction now. I'm not going to steal any of Russell's thunder, but you can see there is having an immutable copy of your backup, an immutable copy of your data, the cure. I'll let Russell answer that one. As I've said, Mark will go into the detail. And then Andy's going to give us a testimonial because we've actually implemented this solution for Andy. I always like to put this slide up because no matter how many times I talk to people, I still find that people forget some of the things about us. So this is just a very quick slide just to remind people of who TruStack are and kind of what we do. There's a few things on here which stand out. The one which is the most important to myself and Russ and the rest of the team is this technically led. So every piece of technology that we resell and stand behind, Russell's personally had a hand in making sure that technology fits the requirements of you, the customer. So we often find that customers, when we propose a technology to them, they might want to look at other things. They go through what I'll call a bit of a beauty parade. Well, we do that exact same thing internally here at TruStack. So anything that we bring to you, Russ has already put it through the ringer. He's already looked at several different options. So I think that's really important. The end-to-end managed services provider, that's another one that kind of stands out to me as well, in that, you know, everything we do, we want to add some value to. We want to add some sort of additional service to. We're finding that over the last 10 years that people's appetite to look after their infrastructure is declining. And what they're far more interested in, and you'll all understand this, is you want to look after your applications, your line of business applications. Clearly, the infrastructure is important to that, whether that's infrastructure that's either on-premise or, you know, in the cloud. That's where we would come in. We're looking at the infrastructure that allows your applications to run on. Mark, do you want to just advance the slide on, please? So this is it's a bit of a naff American phrase, our infographic on our approach to security. I'm not going to go through this in granular detail because I haven't got the time today, but suffice to say that in order to make your security posture as competent as possible, there's lots of different layers. The more layers that you have, the harder it's going to be for someone to get through, whether that's getting through from a perimeter point of view or ensuring that end users are also protected. But also, as we're discussing today, part of that layer, part of that security posture is also your ability to be able to recover from some sort of incident, which is what we're going to be going through today. There is one other vendor who I'll just call out on this one, and this is Arctic Wolf. So you've probably seen that, or you may have seen, I should say, that TruStack were the EMEA, so that's Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Africa. We were Arctic Wolf's EMEA Partner of the Year. We won that about 2 weeks ago, and it's a massive achievement for us in a highly competitive landscape. And I guess Arctic Wolf is that thing at the top there, the Security Operations Center, which wraps around everything. So all those tools that you would have in your business to prevent some sort of cyber incident, Arctic Wolf is the wrapper around it. So it manages the tools almost. It looks at all the tools. So I'm going to pass you over to Russell now, who's going to go through the next part of the session. I urge you to ask any questions as well, which we'll try and get through at the end. For everyone who's joined today, there is an RFID wallet which will be winging its way to you. So I'll pass you over to Russ now, and you'll take through the next part of the presentation.
Thanks, Phil. Afternoon, everybody. I just want to set the scene a little bit, give you a little idea of what we're seeing in the marketplace, and give you an understanding of what and where immutable backups can fit into the picture. Mark will take this significantly further than I intend to at this point in time. So I just want to stay fairly high level in terms of the overview that I'm giving here. So immutable backups, are they the cure, basically? The saying goes, prevention is better than cure, and we absolutely agree with that. Hence the layered approach to security that Phil touched upon briefly a moment ago. However, sometimes you do need a cure. Prevention methods, they're not guaranteed. With the best will in the world, humans have to manage them, humans have to respond to them. There will be some automation, but it's not guaranteed. So if something's got through, if a threat has become active in your environment, if all else has failed, what you need is to know that you can recover your business to a point in time, known good, and start the fight against that threat once again before it triggers. So today we're going to have a look at the potential cure, or maybe one or two options of a potential cure, i.e. your last chance options. Mark, if you can just move that slide on, please. So what are we seeing in the marketplace? Well, risks continue to increase, significantly so. There's a massive increase now in terms of CV threats that we're seeing released every few days, certainly weekly, by all vendors. Remote staff continue to be targeted with phishing attacks, other attacks. Basically, they became a softer target as a mobile workforce during COVID. We all know that. Those tasks continue to increase and evolve. I read an article yesterday, actually, from Dark Reading it was, and it stated that in Q1 2022, we saw 80% of the total ransomware volume experienced in all of 2021. So first quarter this year saw 80% of all ransomware attacks that we saw last year. And also in Q1 2022, we saw triple the amount of ransomware detections as we did in Q1 2022. So same time period, 1 year later, triple-fold increase in terms of the ransomware detections. So it's not slowing down. The threats are growing, if anything. Security layers are being invested in by our clients and by ourselves. Everybody now is taking security seriously. The it'll never happen to us mentality typically has evaporated these days. So things like next generation firewalls, endpoint threat detection, and policy control, MFA, cloud conditional access policies, just a few examples of security controls that people are choosing to invest in and put in place. And undoubtedly, these are all helping to prevent or thwart many attacks. And on those attacks that do occur, it will be slowing down how they spread within that organization. But as I've previously said, nothing is 100% secure. You know, we can invest in these layers, we can implement them, we can monitor and control them. But it is reasonable to expect in today's age where systems are disparately spread over single and multiple clouds, on-premises systems, users working remotely, that something will penetrate at some point or another. An attack will at some stage manifest itself. Some of the feedback that we're hearing out there in the marketplace is, I guess, from those that have invested in a number of layers of security, people, individuals or teams They struggle to keep on top of the volume of logs or the management overhead of those platforms. They're there doing their jobs. They're alerting you. They're ingesting either into inbox, mailboxes, or other platforms. But people are struggling to keep on top of the amount of information coming out of these layers of security products. Hosted Security Operations Center absolutely helps in this situation. Phil briefly touched on Arctic Wolf before. There are others out there. A hosted SOC puts that layer of coordination, automation, artificial intelligence over and above your team. And they do absolutely add a benefit. And I have a live example of one from last week, actually, where the hosted SOC platform caught a vulnerability for a known CVE exploit. It was actually in a telephony system, the one that we saw last week. And the exploit, or the action that was witnessed, was a phone, an actual desk phone was being used as an attack device, trying to reach back into the management and control system of that telephony system and conduct an attack against it. Without that hosted SOC, nobody would have known that. That information just wouldn't have been surfaced up. So categorically, a last line of defense is needed. So in a lot of our customers now, and in general, people that I'm speaking to out there, people are looking to ensure that they can recover in the event of a successful attack. They accept they've put layers of security in, they accept it's going to protect them significantly more than they would have been protected without it. But they also accept that there is a possibility that something could still manifest or penetrate in time. So they are looking for the cure. And today, one of the best forms of cure is the immutable backup. Accepting that you need to restore your infrastructure, recover the business, but knowing that you can do so, knowing that you've got a non-tampered, good data repository to come back from. Mark, if you can just move that slide on for me. Apologies, you were missing one slide that I had on my side. So if you just go back one to that last line of defense. So the last line of defense is that known, good, guaranteed data repository from which to restore from. And you do have a couple of options that you can look at for this. We deliver a number of options for our customers. One of which would be a cloud-based immutable storage repository that we can marry up to the backup infrastructure, regardless of what the application is, whether it's something like Wasabi Cloud, Azure Blob Storage, or any one of the other vendors that are out there offering immutable cloud-based storage. That is a viable option for some businesses. Maybe slightly smaller businesses potentially would be better suited to that. There are pros and cons. I guess a pro is it's very easy to set up and it can often be quite cheap to consume. Depend on the size of your environment and the data that you have to protect. Cons on that cloud-based recovery piece can be restore times can often be quite lengthy. Ingestion time, if you're a larger organization with a large amount of data to protect, can be quite lengthy. Continual data growth in your environment, whether that's on premises or in the cloud, results in continual cost growth in the cloud. Possible egress costs when you're coming to do restores, and I guess cloud availability would be a consideration as well. You know, you can probably count on the fact that it's one point or another when you need to do a restores, potentially when you'll find that you might not have full access to the solution that you're relying upon. But the other option would be an on-prem option, and by far and away the preference that we have here at TruStack and the technology that's been proven to us now for probably close to 13 years would be the data domain family of products. Being able to have a hardened appliance on-prem with compliance grade immutability is a huge weapon to have in the arsenal in terms of defense against attacks and cyber security attacks on the business. So we've dealt with data domains for a long time. There are a number of pros to having these devices. One would be that it's private ownership of your data, so that device is hidden away on your site or in a colo location. separate network segment. You own that data. That data is on your device. They deliver enormous efficiencies. They're a global deduplication and compression device, first and foremost. That's what they've been known as for many, many years. But they also have that ability to deliver compliance-grade immutability, which meets many, many different standards. But from a UK perspective, ISO 15489-1 is met. FIPS, HIPAA, SOX compliance is all met. One of the big advantages, I guess, of having that appliance on-prem would be typically 10G interfaces, multiple ones on the appliance. So ingestion speeds, restore speeds are blisteringly quick. And we can run multiple recovery streams or backup streams simultaneously. We can deliver air-gapped solutions. We have for a number of our clients. We're delivering a lot of these solutions at this point in time. So having data domain devices hidden behind quality inline and speed firewalls, so basically locking the data domain away off network, potentially having a second data domain in another location behind a secondary inline firewall, gives an air-gapped, immutable copy of your data, vault-like, separate from the rest of your primary estate. I guess the cons on the data domains and owning the appliances would be it's CapEx, right? It's, you know, some people might view that as an old school way of consuming resources, hardware. They can be financed, but you know, it's a CapEx spend, and it's self-managed. Guess in the cloud's maintained, etc., etc. You have to do a few firmware upgrades from time to time on the data domains, but the drawbacks for me are far outweighed by the benefits that these appliances deliver. Dell's got a 4-phase approach to data protection and recovery, and Mark's going to cover that in detail. Our clients, in the example I've just given, they're typically aim to cover phase 0 and phase 1. Mark will cover off how Dell extend this into phases 2 and 3. But an example of a phase 0 solution would be data immutability, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on a data domain. Non-tamperable immutability classes as phase 0. Phase 1 brings that air-gap vaulting into play, so having that secondary device on a second network segment, hidden behind a separate firewall, secured off, locked down to only having specific protocols from source IP addresses allowed to it, gives us a really solid and robust capability to have 2 to 3 copies of our data in 2 locations with 2 immutable, compliance-grade immutable copies of data. This is what we're talking about when we're on about a cure, having a known safe point in which you can restore that data from. Really, that's the overview. That's what we're seeing in the marketplace. That's the type of solutions that we're discussing with customers and delivering with customers at this point in time. So at that stage, I'll pass you over to Mark from Dell, and he can cover in detail phases 0 through to 3.
Russell, thank you very much indeed for setting that up, and thank you, TruStack, for giving Dell the opportunity to talk to your customers. So I'm Mark Galpin, as has already been explained. I'm the country pre-sales manager for the Data Protection Solutions division of Dell in the UK. This is all we do in Dell. This is all my team do. We work with trusted partners such as TruStack to really enable you, the customer, to deploy some of our solutions. Most of these solutions are deployed through our trusted partners. They involve the skill and the expertise that the partners can bring to you, the customer. We're talking about a delicate subject, security, resilience. Yeah, everyone's got different ways of viewing how much protection, how much security they need to have. Unfortunately, we live in a world now where there isn't enough when it comes to cyber. If I look back over my career, when I first started working with data, I was asked to do disaster recovery. The disaster recovery was there because you wanted a second copy of your data in case of a flood or of a fire or a power outage. And that's all very well. And it was very easy for a lot of companies just to spin up another copy, and synchronously or asynchronously replicate that data to a different data center. Disaster recovery is not cyber recovery. So that just, if you've got a disaster recovery plan in place, cyber recovery is something else. Cyber recovery, you don't want synchronous copies of your data. Cyber recovery, you don't want everything available on one LAN. Cyber recovery, you want different administrators, because if those bad guys get into your network, you need to have a safe place. And that safe place could be, as Russell has explained, immutable storage, or it could be complete isolation. And I'm going to step you through over the next 20, 25 minutes, the stages that Dell can offer through our trusted partner environment. So this isn't new for Dell. Cyber recovery is been around in terms of a solution for probably about 3 or 4 years. In terms of a deployment, maybe 6 or 7 years. So we as a company were first asked to design and deploy a custom deployment for a very large global customer of ours who wanted a cyber resilient copy of their data. They had disaster recovery, they had data domain, so they had primary data domain and they had a secondary data domain for the DR. They wanted to explore how they could have a third copy, not of all their data, of some of their data, which provided them with more cyber protection. So we worked with them over a number of years and did a custom deployment globally across many, many data centers. 2018, we commoditized that solution and we made it a product. And we launched PowerProtect Cyber Recovery Solution. CRS is a solution that allows our customers to build upon an install base with Dell and enhance that with cyber recovery, not only in terms of how you store the data, but how you inspect and analyze that data, and most importantly, how you recover that data. Now, this became very quickly a very sought after standard. And in the US, we were approached by a division called Sheltered Harbor, who almost mandate how some of the finance institutions work. And Sheltered Harbor said that if you want to trade on the stock exchange in America, you have to follow our standard. Our standard is Dell. There was only one, and there still is only one. So you'll find that our install base for this solution grew very quickly because, unsurprisingly, everyone who was trading in America wanted to carry on trading. And so Sheltered Harbor basically mandated you have to have a Dell-based solution. Dell and data domain covered in excess of 95% of the FTSE and the New York Stock Exchange, so it wasn't a big deal for many people. And in the last couple of years, we've really just built upon that. We've built upon the fact that we've got multi-cloud solutions available now. So Russell touched on this. We can deploy this on-prem or we can deploy it in the cloud, your choice. And we're starting to see customers deploy it in the public cloud. So we've now got a solution for AWS, and actually in this year, we've just released a solution for Azure. So what I'm going to tell you today, you could run entirely in software in the public cloud if you wanted to. I'll be honest, the largest percentage of people run this locally in their own data center. And the reason, and Russell said this loud and clear, the reason for that is if you want to recover your business, the quickest way to recover your business is to have data secured in your data center, because you can just spin that up and recover it very quickly. What people are doing with public cloud is they are recovering their business into the cloud. So they won't ever bring that data back on-prem. They'll spin service up in the public cloud and their customers will run from the public cloud. That's a very different scenario. And for a larger company, it may be quite possible, but for a smaller company, probably a step too far. So having that secure, isolated copy in your own data center, which you can literally turn on and restart service, is really where we want a lot of our customers to go. the NIST framework is super important here. This has all been built around the NIST framework. So what TruStack do with the larger framework around security, this adds to it when it comes to data and recovering from an attack. What we don't want to do here is deviate from standards. So everything we do follows that same standard. So it's a high-level holistic approach to protecting your data, detecting for the bad guys, responding, telling you, and then most importantly, recovering. And this is the key step. This is why you are looking to spend money on creating that gold copy. Fundamentally, you want to be able to recover very quickly in the event that your primary copy is compromised. So let's think about what happens when your primary copy is compromised. It's your business. The bad guys come in and they don't target one data set, they target all the data sets. And literally within minutes, you'll have a prompt saying your data is encrypted. Please transfer money to this Bitcoin account and we'll give you the decryption key. Dell, unfortunately, works with thousands of customers every day who are in that scenario. We have a separate division of Dell, which there's a Chinese wall in between me and them. I don't know who they're talking to because it's a very secure private division. But this happens time and time again. And the really, really tragic thing, and what we do get told, is if that happens, the average time to recover is 30 days. If you've been hit by malware, the average time your business will be offline is 30 days. And that why do I say that's tragic? Well, there's not many businesses that can survive 30 days. So what we're trying to do here is give you a solution where if you get hit, you can recover your critical services in minutes, not days. And that is a realistic achievement with this type of solution. So I'm going to talk about a journey through how we can vault and secure data. The reason why it's a journey is because some of you will only want to go as far as phase 0, whereas some of you will want to go all the way up to phase 3. And this is really a consultative approach between TruStack and Dell and yourself about where you want to stop and where you believe is good enough for your business. Russell spoke a lot about immutability. Immutability is the first best step, and it is the best step, but it's only the first best step. So a lot of the competition to Dell will say immutability is good enough. Let me try and explain why it's good enough, but it's not the best. So immutability relies upon securing data with a set of credentials. Now, a lot of our competitors will suggest that you should perhaps use a hardened Linux vault, basically a server running Linux, and you harden it, which is fine, and that is a way of approaching the solution. But unfortunately, how do you secure that hardened platform? Well, you secure it with a root user or admin user. What do you think is the first thing the bad guys do when they come in and snip around your network? They steal all the credentials. They look for all the admin root users. They actually look for all the users. And they slowly monitor all the passwords and track everything. So if somebody has root, somebody can disable retention lock. It's as simple as that. Retention lock also is tied to the system clock. The system clock can be altered. If you have root level access to a server, you can change the time of the server. If you can change the time of the server, you can effectively expire that retention. So it's a good solution, but it's not the best solution. And I suppose if you want to get something, a quick win, it's a quick win. What we're suggesting is if you have a data domain, enable retention lock. The retention lock on a data domain is far more secure than a Unix server or a Linux server. Far more secure. This is a purpose-built backup appliance. It's a hardened appliance. The retention lock on a data domain has a super user that you can enable, a governance user. It also has the ability to only disable that retention lock with a USB key on the front of the data domain appliance. So you physically have to be standing in front of the data domain to disable retention lock. You can't hack with the time on a data domain. It's impossible. It's been removed. So there's a number of hardening processes that data domain have that we think makes that solution a usable solution. So many of our customers will harden their environment by using retention lock on a data domain. The downside of doing it on your primary data domain is you start to then impact space because you've put a length of time that you need to keep that data for. Now that means you can't recycle backups, it means you can't expire data. So your data domain will slowly grow and grow, and it may become a little bit cost prohibitive because you say, well, we want to keep a month in retention and then we want to lock it, then we want to actually have a further year on the DD. So it may increase the size of your data domain. Now, you've got a very secure data domain. The price you've paid is you may have a large data domain. And if you're happy with that, that's absolutely fine. Typically, what we see is people moving to phase one, which is introducing a second data domain. Now, many data domain customers probably already have two data domains because they have a disaster recovery solution. So they have a synchronous copy or an asynchronous copy of their data between primary and secondary. So what often this implies is actually by introducing a vaulted data domain, it sometimes becomes the third data domain. Now, your DR copy of your data is everything. It needs to be everything because if you lose your data center, you want to be able to switch over instantly to a second data center. It's your disaster recovery copy. So you typically end up with two copies of everything. Your cyber recovery copy is your crown jewels. These are the top 5 applications in your company that you need to recover to keep your company trading. It could be your sales database. It could be your end of day ledger. It could be your contacts database. It could be your email. It could be a SQL Server database that includes all your finance records. But it's not all your data. It's not everyone's pictures of their holidays. It's not everyone's email. It's not everyone's files going back 20 years. You don't need that day one to recover your business. So what goes in the cyber recovery vault is your critical application. So what we find often is the cyber recovery vault is much smaller than your primary data domain. So you're storing far less data and you're only storing it for 2 weeks. Typically the length of time we suggest for a vault is 14 copies, no more. And why do we say that? When you recover your business, you don't want to go back 2 weeks, you want to go back 1 or 2 days. But malware is a nasty thing. Malware can sit there undetected for months. And so we know that if we're moving data from your primary data center into a vault, there's a very high chance, unfortunately, that we will be moving malware into that vault. So one of the major reasons why when we move data into a vault, we lock it. We don't allow the data to manipulate any other data in that vault. And then we copy it. So we take the data in, we copy it and lock it. That vault can't be changed. Now we know there's a high risk that we've now just put malware into that vault. But because we've locked it, we know that it can't infect other data. So that's phase one. We've got immutable storage, we've got an isolated copy of that data, and we've got effectively up to 14 days where we can pick a copy to restore. Now we'll report that back. We'll tell you exactly how many copies we're storing, when we've synced them in, when that vault is basically attached to your network, when it's not attached to your network, because it's an entirely automated process. And as Russell touched on, we rely heavily on firewalls, and we rely heavily on the fact that that second or third data domain is hardened. It doesn't form part of your Active Directory network. It doesn't have an admin user that is public. It doesn't have an IP address that you can see. It's entirely off LAN. It may be sitting right next door to the other data domain, but it's not physically connected to that network. So when the bad guys get in and they go sniffing around the network, they will never see this data domain. All they'll see is a sync port, which has got a locked door, because that locked door is only open from the inside. And when it's opened, we only allow traffic from the other data domain, nowhere else. So it's synchronization traffic, point to point, no switches involved, direct copper, direct fiber between the two, and we bring that data in. So that's how we isolate. So we believe isolation is key. Immutability is good enough, but isolation is better. So what's phase two? Phase two is analyzing, inspection. It's the third I: immutability, isolation, inspection. And why are we inspecting? Well, we've already touched on the fact we've now got up to 14 copies of your data sitting in a secure, off-LAN, immutable storage array called a data domain. We now need to tell you what's in that data. So we need to be able to give you the reassurance that you know the last known good backup you can recover. So we take that data, we mount it internally within data domain, and we analyze it. And this is a piece of software called CyberSense. CyberSense allows us to look for all the known malware that's out there. CyberSense is based upon an AI code. So it's looking for the known malware. It's also looking for the unknown malware. And because it uses AI, it self-learns. So it learns the characteristics of how the bad guys make malware. And we will detect malware inside that file, much, much deeper sort of inspection than most of our competitors. Some of our competitors just simply look for a change in file name or a change in data size. We actually look inside that file and we look actually what is happening to that data. So it's incredibly intense. We can't scan petabytes of data in 24 hours. Hence the reason why we really only want you to put in there your top sort of 5, 6 applications, because we'll scan that every 24 hours for you and we'll report on that. We'll send you a report to say, we believe these files could be compromised, and we'll mark it as a compromised file. And we won't allow you to recover that if you want to recover out of the vault. We'll say this isn't a known good copy. Your last known good copy of this particular data set was 2 days ago. Why do we do that? The biggest problem we're told when companies try and bring their businesses back online is they would just simply clean the data center, recover data, reinfect it with malware, because they don't know where that malware is sitting. So with this approach, we will only let you recover data that's free of malware. So if you want to bring that critical application back online, and we can tell you that it's clean from last night, you bring it back online. And guess what? You've got one application back and running within minutes, and you know that there is no malware in that application. And we work like that. So that's a really easy and quick way to recover data. What we're seeing now is people wanting to reduce that time to recover. So we can spin up data on a data domain. We can spin up a virtual backup, and you can run that virtual instance from data domain. Equally, we can spin it up in a clean room, which is adjacent to that data domain, which is entirely off LAN as well, and have it there staged, ready either to enable the clean room to become your primary data center, or to push it back to your primary data center. So this clean room allows us very quick recoverability. And in some of our customers, and this is the final phase, so you can't really get any better than this. In some of our customers, this is what they want, but it obviously requires a large amount of investment up front, a lot of extra servers and extra capacity. So hence why we start with that zero, we start with the immutability, we add on the isolation, we add on inspection, and then we really get to this stage where actually, if money is no object, which I would argue money is always an object to most people, then we have this clean room. So that gives you the phases and sort of the discussion points that you can go back and have with your business to say, so where do we want to start this journey? Do we believe as a business immutability is enough? Well, in which case, I would strongly suggest that that immutability is on a data domain, not a server running Linux. If immutability is not quite good enough, maybe isolation is something you want to consider. The skills within TruStack, the skills within Dell can give you that isolated copy that will not be visible to the bad guys. And what you're doing then is you're really saying to your CTO or CFO, not only have we got a backup of our data, we've made it immutable, but we've isolated it. And if we really do get hit, we have the ability now to recover data. We may have to inspect it as we recover it. We may have to clean it as we recover it, but we will have some data to recover. Because if you haven't done that, if you haven't got it isolated, you've lost everything. Those guys, unfortunately, have come in and encrypted your entire data set. Now, what normally happens at this point is somebody says, well, I've got tape. And tape is great for isolation. Unfortunately, it's not the quickest way to recover your business. Tape is great at recovering files. It's not really the best to recover entire environments. So just the same as 20 years ago, we had tape and disaster recovery. Nowadays, we have cyber recovery, disaster recovery, and maybe some people still use a bit of tape. Honestly, Dell don't have conversations about tape very much with our customers today. Most people are trying to remove tape out of their environment. But I will accept it provides you with a very, very good isolated copy, albeit it may have malware on that tape, albeit it may take you a few days to spin up the right tapes to recover, and then realize you've got malware on that tape. So it's possible, it's not the quickest. And we're really talking here about bringing your business back online. That's what we're trying to do. Give you the ability to restart your business.
That was actually one of the questions that someone had asked in advance, Mark. So I hope that answers the question for the person who asked it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So just the final slide for me, really. Where does this apply? What can we do this with? So if you look at how you're building your business today, bottom left-hand corner there, on-prem, protected. I mean, yes, you may be using a bit of public cloud, but typically we're seeing here standard back office applications, either with Hyper-V or VMware, maybe an Oracle database, maybe a SQL database. You've got your own backup software, may not be a Dell backup software, maybe competitors to Dell. You're backing that up, and maybe you're putting that onto a data domain, or maybe you'll just put it onto some plain disk. We can add to that very quickly with either phase 0 or phase 1. We can give you that synchronized copy into a vault. So whatever you've got on the left, if you've got data domain, you're halfway there. If you haven't got data domain, you need to send your backup to a data domain on primary, and then we can vault that data for you. Typically also, if you're starting to think about the use of cloud, you could vault in the cloud. So we could run a vault using data domain, using cyber recovery software in the cloud. And this is a conversation that's growing in speed. As more and more customers look at the public cloud, we're having this conversation more. I wouldn't say that this is a huge movement from on-prem to public, but it's certainly happening. And then the final area which we're starting to have conversations with is those SaaS workloads. So we're very aware that many customers now are moving workloads out of their data center up into the cloud. And probably the biggest one that you're all seeing is Office 365, Microsoft 365. So you've given Azure all of your email data. How then do you secure it? So we do have a backup solution that not only protects your Office 365 data, but allows you to isolate that data as well. That's a different conversation. We haven't got time to touch on it today, but we can absolutely, and Russell and the team can take you through how we would do that. So thank you very much indeed for listening to me for the last 10 or 15 minutes, or maybe longer. Hopefully you've got a gist of really some of the phases you can jump through. It really doesn't take a huge change in what you're doing today. If you're using data domain, you're already halfway there. Russell, any other questions come in?
No, we had one question about if the slides will be shared or not. It's been answered that yes, they will after this. I haven't seen any further questions come through.
No, I thought it was a really good overview from yourself, Russ, painting a picture, then Mark getting into the detail of it there. So last week, myself and Andy recorded. Well, we didn't do the recording. We had a professional company come in and do a video testimonial to back up, if you pardon the pun, what we're talking about. I think it's really important to have some sort of independent review of what we're talking about as well. And obviously, there's no better way to do that than a customer testimonial. So we're going to try and run this video. We have had one or two problems sharing it on the Livestorm site through Mark's laptop, but as we're recording it, and this material is going to be available, we'll give it a spin, and hopefully everyone will get it across.
Hi Andy, could you tell me a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your role at Unipress? I'm Andrew Furness. I work for Unipress, which are a Tier 1 automotive supplier to Nissan and Renault. I work in the IT department and I've now been there 21 years. Yes, a lot. I think IT is one of those where change is constant, and from 3 servers in a rack to 20 servers in a rack, then back to 3 servers in a rack in 20 years. Everything is IT now. The business itself, from production, labeling, parts going out the door, automatically barcoded, lots of change. Cybersecurity is the big one at the moment. We're a parent corporation in Japan. The automotive industry within Japan have been heavily affected recently with cybersecurity incidents. Subsequently, that is the big driver at the moment, to be more aware of what can go wrong. From an IT point of view, there seems to be far more disruption than there was previously. Where people work's changed, what device they're using to work on has changed. A lot of people are using their own personal devices to access IT, which really increases the risk of a security issue, because you can't guarantee that they have a current malware solution on their device. The right data in different places. When people are at work working at the desk, they will follow the structure they always have done, but when they're working from home, it might be more convenient for them to save the data somewhere else, or save it in probably not a sort of logical way. So you need a solution that guarantees the security of the business's data, regardless of what device they're using. Well, although our current backup solution has served us well over 5 years, recent events in Japan around repair and cooperation and supply base in Japan with cyber security issues, we've had to look at how secure my data is. And currently, although I'm writing data in 2 different places, as well as my primary store, it can be changed. And recent cyber security events and ransomware attacks, they're now traversing your network and looking for your backups. And if they find the backups, they're encrypting them as well. So my point of recovery is very, very different. I can't bring the data back if it's encrypted. In my current solution, although it has tape backup, bringing tapes back takes a long, long time. Plus, my tapes are a month old, so I'm going to lose a month data. And a month in our industry is lots and lots of transactions, and the business just can't really recover from that quickly. I was looking to protect against my backups being encrypted and not being able to restore them. Your backups are kind of your last line of defense. Although you don't want to ever have a ransomware attack which could affect any of your systems, you need to be sure that I can bring the data back, worst case scenario, and I couldn't with my existing solution. The data domain offered the immutable storage, which was the biggest driver for what I wanted to achieve out of backups. I wanted to make sure I had a good backup copy somewhere where it couldn't be changed. So in the horrible event that I do have a ransomware infection, I know if all my production data is encrypted, I can bring back that copy much quicker than I can from a tape. Plus, the data domain device allowed more copies of my backup data, so I could bring back the night before as opposed to the month before, which is really, it's good to know that we can recover really quickly with that device. The biggest security enhancement it's provided above all else is it's secure, where my current solution arguably wasn't. Plus, TruStack have made a number of changes to the environment, which makes it even more difficult for it to be ever infected by ransomware. The device no longer sits on my domain. There's less privileged users to the system. It's more difficult to find the backup data than it was previously. We had budgeted for a new solution because my current infrastructure was 5 years old, and from a business point of view, we always kind of look to replace within 5 years when the equipment may be reaching its end of life. So I was looking for a solution, but the cybersecurity element has kind of brought the thinking more forward. We now need to think not only am I replacing the hardware, I need to know what is current and what is now best practice. The next element on our cybersecurity awareness is around auditing and change to data. We're looking at a solution with TruStack around metrics for changes to my file data where it's audited and any sort of anomalies are highlighted very quickly. Changes around usernames, passwords, SQL data, how it's accessed, how it's queried. The network solution offers a lot of key enhancements around cybersecurity awareness. So I'll be, for instance, if some company data was getting changed quite quickly or in a period of the day which isn't expected, say my financial data, there was a lot of changes to financial data at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is kind of out of the ordinary. The network solution highlights that to the IT team very quickly so we can make appropriate responses. The biggest compliment I can give TruStack as a business is they provide a level of trust which isn't there with other suppliers. Often suppliers, it's about a sale. They might sell you something that's inappropriate because the margin might be good on that item, where TruStack has never kind of been that way. They understand how our business works, and they know to develop and tailor a solution that meets our requirements, but only meets our requirements. It's not meeting somebody else's requirements, it's all ours. And like many projects we've worked with TruStack before, I can ask questions that are always answered, whereas you don't find that with other suppliers. Plus, I know if I have any issues after the event, it'll be cleared up really quickly. It gives you the confidence to, when you are spending a large part of your budget on an item, that you know it's well invested. I'd like to think moving forward with TruStack would become less of a reactive and more a proactive approach. So I know TruStack offer like a coverage or like a support packages that are more proactive than what we currently have. So moving forward, I would say we want to look to enhancing the IT element that we can provide Unipress, but in a way that suits both parties. Because you don't want to react to when things go wrong. It's best off that it didn't go wrong to start off with. And we have, in Unipress, we have a very small IT team and quite a large user base. So we do rely on trusted third parties to help us support our business. And I would just hope moving forward that we are going to stay with TruStack.
There you go. That was a really open and honest testimonial from Andy. What he was alluding to at the end there was kind of, it says I'm muted.
Okay.
I don't think I am. Yeah.
Hear you fine.
Sorry, Mark, say again. Yeah. What Andy was alluding to there was the fact that, you know, what I mentioned earlier. So customers are wanting to look after their line of business applications. They don't necessarily want to have full ownership of the infrastructure, which is what Andy was alluding to. So we offer, you know, that full level of ownership. Whereas with Unipress at the moment, I think it's like a partial kind of ownership. So they own some of the infrastructure and we own some of it. What Andy was getting at was perhaps we would, in time, sort of own a little bit more of that. We've got some customers who've got much more ownership than Unipress. We've got some who've got absolutely zero ownership of their infrastructure, and we're quite happy to work around, you know, whatever people's requirements are. So I'm keen to wrap this up. I know that we were a few minutes late in starting things off, but you know, I know how busy everybody is and how everyone seems to work in blocks of half an hour, and it's 1:30 now. So I guess the next step is, look, if you would like to really delve into this a little bit more and understand how a data domain device might help with your recovery strategy, you know, reach out to your account manager, talk to us, and we can start that sizing exercise. We can put some commercials to you, and we can, you know, tick that box for you. But I just wanted to thank you once again for taking the time out of your day to join us, and those of you who joined will get a nice shiny RFID wallet through the post very soon. So thanks once again to Mark and Russell, and yeah, we'll see you soon for another Lunch and Learn. Thank you.